Welcome. I'm Georgia Stryker Keilman from Hellenic Genealogy, Geek.
Hi, I'm Carol Kostakos Petranek of Spartan Roots. This is the final video in this series of bite-sized Greek genealogy. We have taken you through the process of finding your ancestor's original surname and village of origin, and how to find information about him or her in Greek records. Today, we're going to conclude by discussing where to find death information in Greece and our ancestors' burial practices. These are the topics we're covering in this video: the burial practices of our ancestors, village church death registers, civil death registers, a variety of other records where you can find death information, cemeteries in Greece, and village history books. And we want to remind you, don't forget to download the handout, which is found in the description section of this YouTube video. All right, we're ready to get started with Georgia, who's going to walk us through some burial practices of our ancestors.
All right, we wanted to cover these burial practices because many people watching are not familiar with this process and how it can affect your research. So, here is our introduction to burial practices of our ancestors. Greek burial practices reflected a blend of religious beliefs, cultural traditions, legal regulations like bodies are not embalmed, the burial must take place within 12 hours of death, and the bodies are exhumed after 3 to 5 years. In Greece, bodies are exhumed after 3 to 5 years because cemeteries are overcrowded and grave space needs to be recycled. Okay, cemetery plots, rent or own. Most cemetery plots in Greece are rented rather than purchased. A standard rental time is 3 to 5 years, and to purchase plots for long-term use is very expensive. So you may not find your ancestors' family memorialized in the cemetery if they did not have a long-term cemetery plot. The exhumation process. Timing. Exhumation usually occurs after 3 to 5 years once the rental period expires. The law requires that the family be present when the body is exhumed. So the procedure for this is the body is exhumed and any remaining bones are cleaned and washed with wine by family members. This is a deeply emotional process, as many times the body is not totally decomposed at the time of exhumation. Note, if the family is not in attendance at the time of exhumation, the body will be retrieved from the burial site by personnel and deposited into a communal grave at the cemetery. The osteophylakion, the final resting place. The purpose of ossuaries. After exhumation, the clean bones are placed in an ossuary box, and the osteophylakia help manage space constraints in cemeteries, and that's actually the building. Procedure. The bones are usually placed in a small labeled box, often accompanied by a photo or a personal item. These boxes are stored in a building known as the osteophylakion, usually located on the cemetery grounds. Now, there's a rental fee for this also. It's charged to keep the bones in the box in the osteophylakium. If the family stops paying the fee, the bones will be removed to the communal cemetery plot.
All right, let's start looking at some actual registers and records. Church records are kept by village priests, as we mentioned in previous videos. Now, these priests may have the books at the church, or they may keep them at their home. This is a page from a village church death register. The information recorded is the dates of death and burial, the deceased residence, age, and marital status. Sadly, many old pre-1900 village church books have not survived. If you visit your ancestral village, ask to meet with the priest. He may give you permission to see the books. You'll need to be able to recognize the way your ancestor's name is written in Greek. And in one of the very first videos that we recorded, we gave you some tips as to how to do this. Also, you need to remember that the legal requirement is that the burial occur within 12 hours of death. So you'll see the burial date either the same day as the death date or the very next day. So if you see that, it's not a mistake. That's the way things are done in Greece. This is a civil death record. Civil record keeping began around 1925, and these records are held by municipalities in the Civil Registry Office, or Lixarchian. The information in civil death records includes not just the deceased death information, but also his date and place of birth, his parents, and his spouse if he or she was married. Now, on this copy on the right-hand side in red, you can see where various pieces of this information are recorded on this form. When I was digitizing village church books at the metropolis of Sparta, I found some burial permits like this one, tucked between pages in the death register books. These are civil documents. They are issued by the municipality. It appears they were given to the priest who placed the document in the death register book after the funeral. The burial permit records the deceased's name and age, his or her father's name, and the date, time, and place of death. Municipal registers are filled with important information. Most people look at them to find names and birth information. However, there's a lot more to these records. On page 2, there's a field which notes the date the person was removed from the register, the reason he or she was removed, and the date of that reason. So, if the death was recorded, this is where you will find the death date. These registers are kept in the municipal offices and in the archive offices. Notary records. In video 6, we talked about finding dowry contracts in notary records. However, many different types of records were notarized, including wills. Here's an abstract of a will for Constantis Salvara dated 1836. This record gives us both his birth and death dates as well as the disposition of his property. Constantis was born in 1789, not 1879, which is written in the manuscript. That was a typo. He died on June 15, 1836, at the age of 47. In this will, Constantis transfers his property to his brother Antonio and authorizes him to give each of his 3 sisters 300 drachmas. Constantis also requests that 3 donations to the church be made, that 100 drachmas be donated to the village primary school, and that a donation be made to repairing the village church St. Spiridon. Notary records are phenomenal. They are kept in archive offices. To conduct a search in them, the archive must have created an index of the notary records, which would include the name of the parties in each document and the date of the document. So you will need your ancestor's name, village, and a time frame for when that document may have been prepared in order to enable the search in notary records. Some archives are putting digitized notary files online, and some archives are also writing books that have synopsis of the files, and that's where this example came from. So if you have the opportunity to go to an archive or to check out their online records, be sure to look for wills.
Many women died in childbirth. So let's talk about how to find clues regarding the year of death. Yorgos Statopoulos is my great-grandfather. He married Yanula Limberopoulou in 1870. Their daughter, Krasaida Sarah, was born in 1883. You can see that in 1884, Yorgos married a second time to Yanula Liakakos. Based on this information, I would assume his first wife, Yanula Limbropoulou, died in childbirth in 1883. This was a very common occurrence. The men remarried shortly after the death of the first wife so that they could have someone to take care of the children he had with his first wife. So now you just have to look at all these dates and try to compare them, and you'll see that you'll be able to understand when the first wife died. This is a page from a school register for the year 1907, which we showed in a previous video. Along with the information about the student, it has a column for the father's occupation. On line 4, the father's occupation reads orphan. Orphan in this record means that a child's father died. We now know that the student's father was deceased by the year 1907. To do further analysis, if we are able to examine school records for previous years, and if we find this student or a brother or sister, we can see if the father was living or deceased in those earlier records.
Let's talk for a minute about cemeteries. Don't overlook cemeteries as a place to find death information. Although most graves in Greece are fairly recent, many are marked with the word "oikos," meaning family. You will see the names, birth and death years, or ages of several members of the same family carved in the marble. Almost every crypt has a photo of the deceased, and many are elaborately decorated like those you see here. However, some cemeteries are in quite poor condition, particularly those in villages which are now deserted. Also note that there is no cemetery office. Records of burials are included in the village church death book that we saw just a couple of slides ago. These war monuments are found in every village in Greece, usually at the platea or near the church. They memorialize the men who were killed in combat while defending Greece. The dates of the conflict are inscribed on the top, and the names of the men and their rank in the military are below. My cousin, who wrote a master's thesis on this topic, explained how these men are remembered. Quote, "On days when there's a ceremony, a wreath is laid in front of the monument. Students recite poems about heroes that are related to the celebration." End of quote. My ancestral village, Ios Sparta, has a distinction of being the first village in all of Laconia to erect a war monument in the year 1930. So that's a real source of pride for those of us from that village. Let's talk about village history books, and we usually do mention these in these slides because these are phenomenal resources. Remember, a history book for your village may have information about your family. Biographies of individuals and extended families can give you birth, death, and information about their lives. On the left is a book about the village of Zerokambi, Laconia, written by Dimitrios G. Laskaris. He includes not only the history of the village, but folklore and stories and information about the village families. In this brief bio, we learn that Dimitrios Anastasios Voltis was born in Zerokambi in 1898, and he died in Athens in 1970. That death place is important, as his death information will be in Athens, not in the village of Zerokambi, unless a municipal clerk updated the village records, and that clerk may or may not have updated the records to reflect the death. On the right is a history book about Monthidea Arcadia, which is filled with information about its people. Here's an excerpt about two young men who died in Albania during the war there in 1940. These books are, of course, written in Greek, but do not be intimidated. There are new translation tools that can help you read them. There are also books written in English that relate stories of families from different parts of Greece. For example, John Antonakos is an American author. He's written several books that are for sale on Amazon, and some are also online at Google Books. Among them are the one on the left, The Pioneer Moneites of Newark, New Jersey, and on the right, The Greek American Community of Essex County, New Jersey. These are biographical sketches of families living in these U.S. communities, which detail their origins in Greece as well as their life in America. Have you searched Google Books, Amazon, and some of the other sources listed up here on the top left to see if there's something available for your village? It's a really important thing to do, and you may be pleasantly surprised that there is something out there for you.
Okay, this book titled Arcadia, A Cultural History by George Papatheodorou is written in English. You can find the names, date of death, village name, and in many cases, where and how the person died. And as you see, I've enlarged a little section there. So you can see they were executed in the stream of Ius Nicholas in Tripoli. So many times this information comes from survivors of the situation. The next two are very important books, I think. This is The Persecution of the Greeks in Turkey Before the European War. It was written by the Archimandrite Alexander Papadopoulos, and it was published in 1919. Again, these are stories of survivors that they tell about what they witnessed. It's a free book on Google. It's 227 Greek names are transcribed in there, and I had already posted them on Hellenic Genealogy Geek blog. So Carol has put a link in the handout for you. But let's look at what you would see. Since this is people that were survivors, they give you namely Lambos Gahaya, his son, Constas John, Sepolis, Harlambos, Mavrudis, and George. The fate of these workers in the field about Malgar is unknown, though it is probable that most of them were slain. In other places, it will give you very distinct information about the death and when it happened. Persecutions of Greeks in Turkey since the beginning of the European War. This was translated from official Greek documents. It was published in 1918. Again, it's a free Google ebook. We have transcribed all the names. There are 319 names in there. But here's an example of what you will see in that book down below. So again, testimonials from people that were there. Okay. In summary, death information is in church death registers kept by the village priests, civil death records found in the Lexarchian offices, municipal registers kept at the archive offices in municipalities, wills found in orderly records at archive offices, cemeteries, and the osteophylakion. You might find a gravesite for recently deceased family members, village history books, and war memorials. We have enjoyed making these videos and hope you have found them helpful. We are working on putting together a book with all the presentations and talking points so that those of you who want to have the information in printed form can do so. We want to make it available on a website like Amazon.com so that you can easily order it.
We also plan to do future videos, hopefully covering some of the additional topics that you have requested. Thank you so much for being with us. Georgia and I wish you good luck in your Greek genealogy research.
Yes, bye. Good luck. Bye.
Bye.